During the last week of September 2023, Live Nation made headlines once again, this time for something seemingly good. They finally announced their On the Road Again program, and I feel like that was something that needed to be done because over the past couple years, we've seen a lot of bands being very vocal about how unfair merchandise fees are and how hard it is to stay on the road. And in Live Nation's own words, they made this program because developing artists playing in clubs are the backbone of live music. Now, we've already covered this topic on this channel once the announcement was made, and we went through all the bullet points of it to check it out. If you want to check out that video, I'll throw a link in the description, but I've been touring for a long time. I've done merchandise, I've done tour management, I've done backline tech stuff, and I've done shows in Live Nation venues all over the world. So immediately, while I did admit this looked good on paper, I was like, something's up here because it's Live Nation. They're $1 billion company. They're not just doing this to be nice to other bands. They're trying to get good PR, and there are probably some catches. Well, it's been a little bit of time, about 3 weeks since this program has come out, and there have been a lot of bands that have been doing Live Nation venues, and there's been a lot of talks behind the scene, and today I want to cover some of that stuff because this program is definitely not as black and white as it seems. And I kind of just want to share with you some of the things I've found out that were kind of like, yeah, I kind of knew this was going to happen. But before we dive into this, a quick refresher, just in case there's anybody out there that is not familiar. What this On the Road Again program entails is that they're going to pay an extra $1,500 per show in gas and travel cash for all headliners and openers on top of nightly performance compensation. Clubs will also not be charging merchandise selling fees, so artists keep 100% of merch profits for each show. Live Nation has made a $5 million donation to Crew Nation, which is Live Nation's global relief fund for live music crews, and this will support crews across the industry facing unforeseen hardships. On top of all that, they're going to have special On the Road Again bonuses for tour, promoter, and venue staff, the behind-the-scenes heroes helping shows happen. Now, keep in mind, everything that I just read to you and showed on screen is in Live Nation's own words. That is the exact way that they worded all of this stuff. But there are some things you need to know about this. More specifically, when we're talking about the merchandise fees, they said they're not going to be charging merchandise selling fees anymore. Well, that only applies to specific clubs, and a lot of those clubs are usually in your about 2,000 capacity or under. There are a couple that are bigger than that, but it's only about 80 or so. It's not every Live Nation club, and it also only specifically applies to North America. And a lot of these venues are already artist sells venues. We've talked about that before. The difference between artist sells and venue sells is exactly how it sounds. But all too common in this industry, there have been merchandise fees at venues that are artist sells, where the artist or the merchandise manager has done all of the work. So keep in mind, while this does look good that they're getting away with the merch fees, or doing away with the merch fees, rather, it does only specifically apply to a list of venues, about 80 of them, that are club venues that were already artist sells venues to begin with. Also, the one big thing that nobody was really talking about is there's a time limit on this On the Road Again program. As of right now, it's going until the end of 2023, and then they're cutting it off. Now, some of my Live Nation friends that work at these venues have told me that the On the Road Again program in itself is ending at the end of this year. That includes the bonuses and the extra cash to the bands. But it does sound like they are going to do away with the merch fees at all these venues through next year as well. So that is a bonus to keep in mind, and that is a good thing they're doing. But all in all, to me, this seemed like a giant PR thing. Like, it was good PR. The second that they announced this, there were journalists and other online outlets that were posting about this, just praising it nonstop. Like, they didn't dig into the little specifics. They just said, this is amazing. And again, going back to what I've said before, this is something that Live Nation needed to do because they have been scrutinized like crazy lately. But now that we're a few weeks into this, there are a couple things I want to bring up because a lot more information has come out. And I have also been a part of groups talking online that are kind of private, that have been sharing their experiences of how this has worked. And I kind of want the general public and fans that go to concerts to know like what the little things are here. Because again, It's Live Nation. We all knew there was going to be a catch, and there are some. Now, the first big thing that was being talked about this is that this is going to put a lot of pressure on independent venues. This is going to make it look like Live Nation is on the band's side. We're going to pay you more. We're not going to take merch fees. So don't play at these other venues. Play at our Live Nation venues. And the National Independent Venue Association, also known as NIVA, and that's how I'll refer to it the rest of this video, they've released statements on this, and they are very concerned, rightfully so. In a recent statement, NIVA did say that this is going to purposely divert bands and artists from independent venues in favor of playing at Live Nation-owned venues. They said that temporary measures may appear to help artists in the short run, but actually can squeeze out independent venues, which provide the lifeblood of many artists on thin margins. Independent venues and promoters are investing in and elevating up-and-coming artists every day, and NIVA is supporting these efforts nationally. The initiative announced yesterday may seem like a move to follow the lead of some independent venues. It is not that. NIVA also reminded people that Live Nation is a publicly traded conglomerate. They have so many resources, and they're going to use something like this to keep and take more control over the independent music market. Their statement continued by saying, independent stages where the majority of artists, musicians, and comedians start their careers are small businesses and nonprofits. They're continually facing rising costs, increased deceptive ticketing practices in the resale market, and ongoing challenges following the global pandemic. Our stages are critical to the live entertainment ecosystem and local economies, and they must survive. The economics of touring must drastically improve for artists and independent venues. There has to be a better way. NIVA will continue to support artists and empower independent venues as we collectively find it. Now, while they didn't state specifically how they plan to battle Live Nation or kind of fight back against this On the Road Again program, I kind of get their point, and I feel their pain in that situation because we have talked about on this channel how Live Nation in the past has swooped in when venues are getting ready to close their doors and they buy out the majority stake. So while they don't look like they're publicly a Live Nation venue, they are owned and operated by Live Nation. And I saw a lot of you guys comment on this original video that you didn't know that some of your favorite venues that you're going to are owned by Live Nation. And it's big and small. I saw one comment bring up the fact that there are dive bars and wineries that independent bands can play at instead of Live Nation venues. Well, surprise, Live Nation owns a lot of dive bars and wineries and stuff like that. If you want to check out a full list, if you're curious, it's all available on Live Nation's website. And it is a gigantic list. But if you do want to see that and gain more information, I'll throw a link in the description where you can go check out that list because I think some of it might surprise you. But the big thing I want to talk to you guys about is the hands-on experience from other people on the road ever since this On the Road Again program began. I have a lot of friends that still tour, and I'm part of private groups online where people discuss their experiences on the road. And there were some things that were brought up that I would like to say I'm surprised, but the more and more people were talking, the more I was like, okay, that makes sense that Live Nation would do that, and there's definitely something else going on. So one of the first things that came up was somebody was talking about how at the end of the night, they've still had a Live Nation rep come up to calculate their merchandise sales and figure out the sales tax, and then have the artist touring merchandise manager rep sign off on that. Now, something like that I get because Live Nation is covering themselves so that they don't have to pay the taxes on the merchandise that was sold. They're just making sure there's a paper trail of, hey, the band is going to be paying taxes on this. So that's totally understandable. I get that. But there is a catch to that because now Live Nation is using the tax thing as a way to see exactly how much bands were selling, even though they're not taking a fee. So there's something going on with that. Some of the people that I've talked to have said that a Live Nation venue has told them that they still want to see numbers for projections for next year, but I don't know, like, the money side of that, if there's anything else going on. I don't know if Live Nation is able to take that money that they would have made from a merch fee and write it off as a loss, or write it off as a donation that they've actually, gave that money back to the band that they would have taken from a merch fee. So it does seem really kind of odd that venues are still wanting the actual settlement sheets from bands, even though there's no merchandise transactions taking place at all, or merchandise fee or money transactions taking place at all. That's something weird to me. If I were on the road still doing merch, I would probably straight up say, no, if you're not taking a fee, there's no reason that you need to be involved or see how much we sold at all. The other concerning thing is that is actually showing Live Nation how much they're losing out on merchandise fees. So I feel like going into next year or the next year after that, they're probably going to use that as an excuse to be like, hey, we lost X amount by not taking money from bands, so we're going to have merch fees again. I don't know though, man. This is all speculative. We'll see what happens in the future, but it is odd to me that they're trying to collect settlement numbers when they don't have anything to do with merch right now. Another odd little loophole from a friend of mine, but now that I say odd, I mean, it makes sense. They said that they did a show at one of these Live Nation venues that's listed as a no merch fee, but at the end of the night, somebody came up to collect a merch fee based on the grounds that the show was booked by an outside promoter and it was not promoted by Live Nation. I guess when it comes down to it on paper, yeah, there's probably nothing wrong with that because Live Nation didn't promote the show and an outside promoter can do whatever they want. But it does seem a little misleading that that specific venue was listed as a no merch cut venue, but there was still merch cut because it was an outside promoter. So at the very least, Live Nation should probably change their wording to make that more specific, or that could have been intentional in the fine print that nobody saw. But let's go on to the extra $1,500 that bands are getting on top of their already guaranteed pay. Because I said in my last video, that seemed like it was too good to be true, and it might be. I was actually told by somebody that did one of these venues that they did get $1,500, but half of that, $750, was in gas gift cards. It was not cash. Now, that's great and all, right? But it was specifically Shell gas station gift cards. Now, for a band that's traveling in a van, in a trailer, or a bandwagon possibly, that's fine. You can get into a Shell gas station totally fine, even though a Shell gift card makes you have to specifically use Shell. But at a normal Shell gas station, a tour bus cannot pull in there. So effectively, they're giving $750 in gift cards to bands that are traveling in buses that they might not be able to use. And then on top of that, the bands are having to fill out W-9 tax forms, which means they are going to be taxed on those gift cards that they are receiving from Live Nation. And then the other remaining $750 from that $1,500 was given to bands in cash, but also taxed. The bands had to fill out a W-9 form to receive that stuff, meaning that they're going to be taxed on all of that at the end of the year. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking, and you're absolutely right. That money, if they got it in their show guarantee, would have been taxed anyways. And yes, any money that a band receives from a venue for playing a show is going to be taxed anyways. But that's just one of those things that nobody was really thinking about when all this PR came out. It just makes for more paperwork, money that bands are going to have to pay at the end of the year once they get 1099 from all these Live Nation venues. And again, it didn't stipulate that they were going to be, brand specific gas cards for half of that money. And I've kind of battled with this internally where I was like, well, that's $750 worth of fuel cards they wouldn't have had. But the other part of my brain is like, well, why is it Shell? And why are they gift cards? Why are they specifically making bands spend their money at Shell? Why not just give them $1,500 in total? And that made me wonder if Live Nation maybe has a deal with Shell and maybe we're gifted those gift cards, or they're somehow partnering with them and get them at a discount. I don't know.
Moments later.
Now, the funny thing is, as I'm sitting here doing this video on my own and saying I don't know, I just did a quick Google search of Live Nation and Shell gas station and found out that as far back as 2015, Live Nation and Shell have actually been doing partnerships with each other. So that's probably why they're using Shell gift cards, is because these two companies already have a business relationship with each other. Now, again, I'm not saying that's specifically bad. It's just one of those things that made me think, like, why? Just a little bit of food for thought. Why specifically Shell? Now we can see they've obviously partnered up for stuff in the past, and they're probably doing that again. But if nothing else with this video, I just want to make people think as I always do when it comes to music industry stuff, this stuff is not as black and white as it seems, especially when there's lots of money involved and companies that can be considered monopolies in the music industry. It's no secret that a lot of things need to change in this industry to allow bands to make more money, to be able to tour and live off of the music that they create for people. And while this Live Nation On the Road Again program seems like a good step, I still think that it's just a giant PR scheme to basically make Live Nation look good for a minute, and then when everybody forgets about it, it's probably going to go back to the way it was. But as I said in the last video, we're going to keep up on this because this is very interesting and this does affect live music and the bands that you guys love and the bands that I love too. And I do think bands should be taken care of accordingly for the music that they make and the shows that they put on. But that's going to be enough for me for this one. If you have any thoughts or anything to add, leave your comments below. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will be back very soon with another video.